Okay, we're back, and I am always honored to have with us our next guest, personal friend, just an all-around good guy, walking political encyclopedia. Sometimes you see him right there in the front row of the White House news conference, and I'm talking about none other than John Gizzi, who's the chief political columnist and White House correspondent for Newsmax. And hey, buddy, how you doing, friend?
I'm doing great, Perry. What a nice reunion.
Ah, yes. Good to hear you and see you. Hey, listen, first of all, just kind of a little bit of an overview. What do you think of all this stuff that's going on in Washington? I mean, have you ever seen anything like it?
Do you have a couple of hours?
Yeah, I wish I did with you.
I would have to say, Perry, that this is the curse of a president's second term. And I've talked to several historians about this. The closest one can find of anything akin to the Obama scandals are the scandals that bedeviled President Truman's first full term after his election in 1948. These dealt with corruption within the Bureau of Internal Revenue, which is what the IRS was called then, and the Department of Justice. This is hauntingly a preview of what is happening right now, albeit the details are much different. In addition, what happened in Benghazi, the final story on that is yet to be told. Overall, it does not look good for a president who, even when people disagreed with him, had personal respect for the man. And now he seems like someone who, at the very least, has not kept his own official house in order. And just from my own perspective in the White House press room, sharp questions and rough rejoinders are flying like shrapnel at the James Brady briefing room, and Jay Carney is truly getting his comeuppance as the president's top spokesman.
Well, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, you got New York Times now turned on him. You got Hollywood turning on him. Now you got some of the more liberal press starting to turn on him. He's nowhere to be found. When you start listing down the 7, 8 scandals that have popped up over the last month or so, he's out campaigning and raising money. When is this guy going to come back to the office and run the company?
Well, again, there's some who worry that he does that too much and wish he would be out campaigning a lot more. I have noticed that he is on the road more often than one would think a second-term president should be. Now, George W. Bush had 62 town hall meetings shortly after his reelection, and these focused exclusively upon reform of the Social Security system. He had an agenda he was pursuing, and all of that was dashed very cruelly by Hurricane Katrina in the summer of 2005. In Barack Obama's case, there is no major agenda save the implementation and funding of the Affordable Care Act, ObamaCare, and the accompanying Medicaid exchanges. This is something that's going to be the next great fight in Congress. There's an immigration bill coming up, but you are correct. The president's on the road. Just yesterday, in fact, he was in Massachusetts campaigning for Democratic Senate hopeful Ed Markey.
All right, let's go over to a couple of direct things. The Gang of Eight has produced their bill. It did get through the Senate. It looks like it's going to be very troubling to get it through the House. My concern is now, is this a political mistake for Marco Rubio to be a part of that gang?
The jury is not in on that yet, Perry. Marco Rubio was crafting and certainly helping some other good senators, including Republican Jeff Flake and Democrat Michael Bennet, and their goal was tremendously sincere, trying to come up with something that would deal with immigration and that would pass both houses of Congress. I spoke yesterday to Senator Bennet and Senator Flake, and they made it clear that there were tough provisions for English within the bill and that health care would be banned in no uncertain terms for illegal immigrants. Those are good things. As to whether the House even deals with this or it takes its own step-by-step approach, one cannot be certain. I have a funny feeling, though, that whatever comes out of the House will be very different from what comes out of the Senate, and this will be resolved in a conference between the two.
Right.
Marco Rubio, in the long run, I don't think is going to be harmed by it, because one way or another, this issue will be resolved by the end of the year.
All right. So let's say they take Obamacare out of the bill. They take
Obamacare is not in the bill.
Well, I mean, excuse me, medical care.
Right.
And so that could show up in the form of maybe welfare or something like that. But let's say that's taken out. They secure the borders, and they have some butchering of the bill over on the House side, and it goes to conference. It still ends up being a huge amnesty bill, doesn't it?
Well, this is why, and I hate to make judgments on what form a final bill will take. Now, again, the current bill on the Senate side does not include any form of health care except employers are permitted to purchase their employees' health care if they are illegal aliens, and that's a private sector decision entirely.
Mm-hmm.
My own guess would be in the Senate. I've talked to several members who say they're going to stand by this bill. It is going to be comprehensive. We know that. Mm-hmm. On the House side, the prevailing attitude among House Republicans is what Chairman Goodlatte of the Judiciary Committee says, and that is that border security has to be dealt with separately, and then E-Verify separately, and other points such as the requirement of English have to be dealt with. That's not an amnesty in any way, shape, or form. And again, it's not a full bill. The greatest fear one can have is when Congress does something with a comprehensive approach. Obamacare is a case in point. Yeah. The 1986 immigration bill is a case in point. My own problem with all of this is expecting lawmakers to read and digest 1,200 pages is a little difficult. My suggestion would be, instead of these laws that try to require members to read the bill, just require that the length of any legislation be no more than 4,025 words, the length of the U.S. Constitution.
There you go. All right. A couple of other things while I have you. What did you think of Governor Christie, and of course now making the appointment for the fill the Senate seat, and what this may mean in October under a special election?
Okay, Republicans have a very good track record, and you certainly know this as a former Republican chairman, of winning special elections, where they can concentrate on one race when the turnout is low and a base is needed to get to the polls. Republicans have a great track record. Just 2 days ago in my home state of Connecticut, they picked up a Democratic-held seat in the state legislature in a special election. Connecticut is not exactly known for being friendly to Republicans these days. 2 years ago in Massachusetts, Scott Brown won an historic election for the seat of Ted Kennedy. So I think having it at that time is pretty good. Now, my personal preference would have been, when I see this pantheon of Democratic power brokers who are becoming Democrats for Christie, I can see that the governor's headed for a landslide re-election. It would be very nice if he had had the election the same day and dared to lose a few margins from his expected landslide re-election to help put one more Republican senator in office for at least a year, when measures such as immigration are going to be thrashed out, the final fate of ObamaCare, and some other measures that are going to be coming across the board, including the budget, of course. Now, again, I could go either way on that. Republicans are having a very interesting primary. 4 heavyweight Democrats are duking it out for their party's nomination in the August primary, so we'll wait and see.
All right. Come to a little bit of more of a bird's eye overview of things. You have Fast and Furious Benghazi, the AP story where the phone taps were, the Fox News story where Holder obviously okayed that investigation, the IRS scandal, which just continues to unravel. Most recently, the NSA, and even the State Department sex and drug deals. I mean, this thing is pretty messy. Do you think that Speaker Boehner has the fortitude to take the president head on all of these things and keep these investigations going?
Yes, I do, because like any good coach, he needs good quarterback, some good offense and some good defense. and he certainly has that in Congressman Darrell Issa, the chairman of the Government Affairs and Reform Committee in the House of Representatives. And remember one other thing. About half of the Republican majority in the House are members who were elected in 2010
right, Tea Party
or 2012.
Yeah.
Largely Tea Party-backed, unbought, and unbossed. And I think with that group out there, and I certainly could name some, there's quite a few people who came up through the prosecutorial arm, a number of former U.S. attorneys who are in office now. So I would say that the Speaker has the fortitude because he's got the team.
Interesting. Do you think Holder will go?
Yes.
Okay. How so?
Before the end of the year, and I will predict right here on Dove that his successor will be the governor of Massachusetts, Deval Patrick.
Wow. What leads you down this road, John?
Patrick is a very possible and likely easy vote for the Senate to confirm as someone who's a former assistant attorney general, someone who's won elective office and has been around political figures for a while. And I would just simply believe that he could get through the Senate because he does not have that much baggage that isn't out in the open. It may well be that the president opts for what he did in the choice of an FBI director. He chose James Comey, who was George W. Bush's deputy attorney general and a Bush-appointed U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Manhattan. An appointment like that with a 10-year term, it was clear he did not need a controversial appointment. And I think you're going to see this more and more when the president has to make second-term appointments. He can't afford the hemorrhaging that a floor fight over a controversial nominee would entail, and he'll go for the safe route. I say the safest he can go, barring any new information, is Governor Patrick for Attorney General.
That's interesting. Now, moving over to Ambassador Rice being moved into National Security Advisor, which is kind of an in-your-face move because it doesn't have to go through Senate confirmation.
Right.
And he can turn around and give her executive privileges, which means she probably never will testify in the Benghazi case.
Well, again, staffers on the president's personal staff, White House staff, are more often than not barred from going before Congress, and they've defied subpoenas successfully. I can remember when my friend, the late White House Press Secretary Tony Snow, said that members of Congress on the Democratic side were trying to pursue what he called a show trial in the investigation of wholesale firing of U.S. attorneys, and that the White House staff would not cooperate with congressional subpoenas to come over and declare executive privilege. So you're absolutely right. We may not hear a peep from Susan Rice when she's in her office down the hall from the Oval Office.
Do you think the Republicans in the House, primarily under Boehner's leadership, are going to somewhat stretch out this IRS and Benghazi and maybe even the NSA investigations to influence the election in 2014?
Well, I don't see how stretching it out can be avoided, and I would say it if the roles were reversed. If Mitt Romney were president and Democrats were investigating scandal. So complex are each of the scandals you've ticked off, Perry, in terms of the labyrinthian bureaucracy that is the Internal Revenue Service, that is the Department of Justice, and that is the National Security Agency, that simply making the charts and explaining to people who started what and where the chain of command reaches its end is going to be a major chore. I don't think they're going to be stretched out. Remember something on the Internal Revenue Service. Someone told me yesterday, well, I worked for a company that had a political action committee, and we didn't seek tax-free status, so it doesn't bother me in the least. Maybe there's merit in that, except for one thing. 95% of the holdups for the tax-exempt status were conservative groups.
Yeah.
In striking contrast, what received smooth sailing for its tax-free status was the Barack H. Obama Foundation, founded by the president's brother in honor of their father.
Unbelievable. Well, John, you're a delight. And how are things going at Newsmax for you?
Just going great. It's amazing. After 33 years with Human Events, I made a relatively quick change, and yet I find myself again following politics around the country. I'm watching very carefully the special election coming up in Massachusetts and New Jersey, as you mentioned, and it took maybe 20 minutes, but my White House pass was changed to Newsmax, and I'm back in the seat at the Brady briefing room. Oh,
you're terrific. Well, congratulations to you, the best to you and your sweetheart. Stay in touch, my friend. I'm sure we have a lot to talk about as the days go by.
Call on me anytime for anything.
Thank you.
I'm watching very closely what's going on in Oregon.
Yeah.
Take care.
Hey, God bless, pal. See you later.
God bless, Barry.
All right, John Gizzi with us. He's terrific. All right, more coming up in just a few moments here on Focus Today.